All righty then, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. For those that might not be in the morning, good afternoon, good night. Allison, Brandon, how you guys doing this morning?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing well. Appreciate everyone that's tuning in, and as people start to funnel in, we really appreciate the time and really excited to be here. So we'll kick things off. This is a DSR demo, so automate your DSRs by end of year, from legacy tech to scale with Transcend. We'll go ahead and go through some of our introductions. With me today is Allison Keene. She's the senior sales engineer at Transcend. We got Brandon Chen. He's the senior product marketer at Transcend, and myself, Cameron Ivy. I'm one of the market managers here at Transcend. Thank you so much for being here, and for both of you for taking the time to be here. Really excited about this. We'll go ahead and share a little bit of the agenda today. So we're going to go through some of the DSR requirements. We're going to talk about Transcend's approach to DSRs, and give you guys a little bit of a live demo and have some Q&A at the end. So please feel free to chime in and ask those questions. We'll be more than happy to answer those for you. So again, thanks for being here. And we'll go ahead to our first slide and allow Brandon to kind of give us an idea of why DSRs actually matter.
Thanks for the pass off, and thank you for the introduction, Cameron. Like we had mentioned, the focus of this webinar will be on the product demo, but first we'll start off with covering why DSRs matter, just as a quick refresher, and also in case anyone is new to the privacy space. So DSRs matter in the context of a few key regulations, with the most prominent of them likely being EU's GDPR, prominent mostly for the fact that it came first, and is when people started to think about the concept of data subject rights and how you would be able to fulfill those to comply with GDPR. So this prompted many companies to start thinking about, hey, do we actually have an accurate record of someone's data rights? Are we able to track that through all of the different systems that we have? And can we do all of that within 1 month, which is the time frame that was allotted by GDPR? And this concept of data subject rights only became increasingly pertinent as a stateside too. Several states started, and now actually many have equivalent regulations today that require data subject rights to be fulfilled. Among those are California's CCPA and CPRA. With CCPA and with many companies doing business within California, it became also relevant for the users that are within California to be able to request and access their data. And that idea, that definition of users only continued to be expanded with CPRA, now expanding it from any consumers to even employees within a company as well, along with the respective timeframes of being able to collect that data within a reasonable amount of time. And of course, this idea of data subject rights also continues to evolve and expand, both, of course, stateside, very relevant to me, though I am biased, seeing as I live within the United States, but also to other countries as well. And then I'll pass it off to Allison to talk through how Transcend automates this process of DSRs so that you can fulfill all of those different regional requirements to reduce risk to the business within the time frame that makes both you and consumers and employees happy.
Great. Thank you. So, when it comes to carrying out DSRs, the manual lift, as I'm sure is not a surprise to any of you on this call, it can be sort of a significant resource drain. So, even if you're not getting a ton of requests, the sort of manual back and forth of making sure that you're adhering to these different regulations and just making sure that your customers or employees or candidates or whoever are having a really good experience. So Transcend is specifically focused on building and maintaining over 200 API connections in order to automatically carry out these different DSR requests. So things like deletion requests, access requests, opt-ins, opt-outs, rectifications, and more. So rather than relying on the sort of legacy tools that are really just a static web form, where the data subject is essentially just submitting their name, their email address, and what it is they want you to do for them. Transcend is going to provide a self-service portal for the data subject that automatically keeps them up to date, sort of the status of their requests, and sends them the full request when completed. You can really configure how you want these workflows to happen, but not only is the end user experience automated, the internal workflow is a no code and really easy to configure workflow that can be automated for you all as well. Now, in terms of sort of differentiators for Transcend, the main things we're going to focus on are alleviating the static web forms, no static web forms. We want self-service portals, alleviating manual workflows, really automating as much of this as possible, making sure that you have some really key pre-flight checks so that we're not carrying out requests when we shouldn't be, and then our extensive list of integrations. And now just to start us off, I like to show this diagram because it really shows the end-to-end flow of our DSR automation. Now, this is meant to be super customizable, very flexible in terms of how you want to run your workflows, all the way from intake through processing of the request. But most of our customers sort of live here in this self-service world, or are leveraging this self-service option, which is really just a privacy center that will be powered by print, but it's going to look and feel like your brand, and it's going to be a space for your various data subjects to come and create requests and really understand sort of the full status and everything that's going on behind the scenes. Now, you can also manually enter requests, of course, but we're trying to automate as much as possible. Or if you really like the way that you have your intake set up right now, we can programmatically get them into Transcend to then kind of carry out in your downstream systems. But I'll be focusing on this first one today with the self-service privacy center. So once a user hits this privacy center, they submit their request, they've authenticated that they are who they say they are, it's going to go through Transcend and go through a series of what we call pre-flight checks. So you can put into place any checks that you want to make sure before it actually carries out in the downstream systems. So things like identity enrichment. So if someone is authenticating with their email address, we will obviously have their email address, but it's possible that not all of your downstream systems are going to have users mapped to an email address. So we can actually take that email address and enrich their identity to return unique user IDs, phone numbers, alias email addresses, things like that. So really making sure that we have broad coverage for any data that's associated with that person. You can put into place anti-fraud checks or legal hold checks. So if you have employees who are on legal hold and that you should not be carrying out deletion requests for example, any sort of HR checks, things like that, and any custom checks that you want. So if you wanted to have sort of a human interaction involved, where somebody has to take a look at the request before it actually hits the downstream systems, or after it hits the downstream systems before the report gets sent back to the user, you can have human interactions as well. But some folks like to just say, nope, I want this to be fully automated. And then finally, it's going to actually go to your downstream system. So whether these are sort of SaaS tools, MarTech, CRMs, or your internal data warehouses, databases, things like that, compile the report and then send back to the user. So a good example I like to start is with LG. So LG is a Transcend customer. This is their privacy center that's powered by Transcend, but you can see that it really looks and feels like LG. It has all their branding and their colors. There are different fonts. They actually choose to host their privacy policy here on this privacy center. But really the main focus is going to be in this make a privacy request button. So you'll see when we get into the Transcend product that you can actually customize your different data subject types. So LG specifically chooses to do this by device. So, you can say, I am a smart TV user. I would like to access my data, and then it's going to prompt me to verify my identity. Now you can set up different flows for different types. So maybe I'm just a broad account holder and I want to correct my information. Again, you can go through this flow and really self-service, authenticate, and go from there. So I'll be focusing in on our test account. It's a fake sort of dummy site here that we have called eShopIt, where we've got a privacy policy, we've got different marketing and privacy preferences, data practices, tracking technologies that all sort of hook into our broader consent offering. I will show you what it looks like to actually make this privacy request. So I click on make a privacy request. Let's say that I'm an employee and I would like to download my data. It's going to prompt me to enter in my email address. And then it sends me an email, which I will bring up on my other screen real quick. And it sends me a link to start a session. Now, once I have started a session, it's going to ask where I am. Now, it's possible that you're going to want to create different workflows based on the person's country or state of residency, given those regulations. So making sure that you are adhering to requests that come through from the EU in no more than 30 days, things like that. So let's say maybe I'm in California and I click confirm. I've already made this request. This is a test account, so it'll tell me, hey, you've already made this request. And if so, I can take a look at my active requests. So this request is in progress. I can see my previous requests that I've made and download previous reports. So this is really all that self-service portal. Hopefully that's coming across that, you don't have to be manually emailing once a request is submitted of, hey, we got your email, we'll get back to you. There's no manual intervention. We're going to automate those emails and the communication with the data subject throughout the whole process. Now, if I navigate into Transcend, what it's going to look like for the business user in the Transcend dashboard in this incoming request tab is I'm going to be able to see all of my various requests. Now I can filter these. I can be assigned to certain data subjects versus other teams can be assigned to others. And if I click in, I'm able to see the status of this request. So I'm able to see sort of a timeline, if you will, of when it's compiling the request, waiting for any approvals if we have approval steps in place, and once it's become downloadable to the user. We'll also be able to see a timeline. So there's sort of 23 out of 28 days remaining because I've applied some expiration dates to this specific type of request. But you'll be able to see when it was requested, when it's passed the pre-flight checks, when it's compiled, waiting for approval, downloadable, and then ultimately completed. Now, if there's anything that requires action, you'll see here there's multiple things that maybe would need to be addressed, or you want to have sort of a prompt a person in the middle. So when I click on this, it's going to prompt me to send a message to the data subject. So I've taken a look at it. I've got that human interaction. I want to say, okay, I can use a specific template here if I want to use templates that we've given out of the box from Transcend. And then I can go ahead and click approve and send. Now I'll also be able to see the details of the request. So what type it is, the data subject type, how it got into Transcend. So through the Privacy Center versus a manual entry or something like that. The region, the language, and then of course, all of the different identities associated with this request, as well as the enrichments that it's gone through and the pre-flight checks. Next, you'll be able to see an audit trail. So what's actually happening on the back end in all the different integrations and downstream systems that we're hitting. Any messages that have been automatically sent to the data subject, or any messages that have been manually sent to the subject. You can keep track of all the different communications here. And then integrations. So integrations are really the key to automating these requests. So rather than having to go to each system individually, search for the user, see whether or not there's data there, report back to the user. Again, this is all part of that automation. So we can hook up all these various different systems, whether that's via API, automated vendor coordination, or even just hooking directly into your systems, things like your databases. We can set these up in advance. So for example, maybe you're using Delighted. You can click into Delighted. You'll be able to see the different profiles that are associated with this user, all the different sort of things that it returns. And then if I come into integrations and I want to add a new integration, I can click add integration. Maybe I want to add, let's say, Salesforce. If I search for Salesforce here, it will show me all the different Salesforce connections that I have available to me. What's really nice is I don't have to sort of visit help centers or get on the phone. I have all the steps to connect right here, very easily for me to understand. And then as I scroll down, I'll be able to see the different data points and the different objects where those data points can be accessed, erased, opted into, opted out of, etc. So it's all very easy to understand. And once you have those integrations set up, you can associate specific integrations with specific data subjects. So let's say, for example, that you use Marketo for customers, but you know that employee data wouldn't live there. You can set up the Marketo integration to be applicable to that specific data subject. And now you can even get even more granular and select data point by data point. I won't get into that too much now, but you can choose data point by data point, whether or not you want it to be accessible, erasable, things like that. Now, what you're looking at on the screen here is the data actions and that we have out of the box. So in general, we will provide all sorts of out of the box offerings for you, and then you can customize them to be specifically tailored to your business. So for example, this delete my data, I can edit this to change sort of how it displays and how it looks and feels to the user. And then I can put into place some specific steps that I want to go through in terms of deletion requests. So I want to send the subject an email receipt. I can use templates that Transcend provides out of the box. I can create my own templates, whichever. I put into a place an approval before sending. So before we actually go out and send that report to the user, we can make sure that there's a human interaction before things actually get deleted. We can make sure there's a human interaction. Completely up to you how automated or how much human interaction you want. The different report templates. So you're actually able to choose, do you want to provide a full report, a redacted report, just a count of where that person's information was found. There's all sorts of things that you can configure. But the last thing I'll mention is that you can ask to request the region. So as I showed in that first sort of walkthrough where I submitted a request, it asked me to self-identify where I live. So in this case, you can set up expiration by region. So if you wanted to say, the EU should expire in 30 days versus somewhere else should expire after another amount of time, that's certainly available. The one final thing to note, about configuring your data actions is a waiting period. So particularly when it comes to deletions, if you want to set it to sort of hold off for a set amount of time before it actually carries out that deletion, just in case you've accidentally submitted a deletion request or something like that. Now, you can also associate these data actions with the different data subjects. And this is actually where you would come to create your own custom data subjects as well. So in that LG example, they did it by device, but you could have sort of your standard ones, your customer, employee, contractor, authorized agent, maybe candidate, if you will. And I can associate different actions to different customers. So maybe I want, or different data subjects, I should say. So maybe I want customers to be able to request a download, a deletion, an order inquiry, and a do not sell. But for employees, I want to just be able to have an access or order inquiry or something like that. So you can associate the different data actions with the different data subjects. Choose your authentication method. So whether you want them to log into an account, whether you want to use the email magic link that I had kind of walked through, or if you want to disable it altogether, and any sort of assigned users and assigned teams. So it's not uncommon to want to have the HR team be responsible for keeping an eye on employee requests, but maybe your customer experience team keeping an eye on customer requests, for example. So you can associate those two. Of course, you can set up your different authentication and retention, but I want to touch on identifiers. So identifiers, as I mentioned before, are the ways that we actually identify the user or the data subject. And you'll see here that you can set up different identifiers and different integrations that those identifiers feed into so that we know when we're doing that enrichment, if somebody gives us an email, we return it with a core identifier, a phone number, a user ID, and that way we can actually carry out those different subjects. Now, in terms of pre-flight checks, these are really customizable. They're great so that you can put into place some automatic checks so that you don't have to be manually combing through these and making sure, is this person on a legal hold? Should I be deleting this data? Should I be carrying this out? If you click on this plus sign here, we have all sorts of pre-made pre-flight checks, but you can also create custom checks as well. Things like email verification, phone verification, a database enricher, so that enrichment, legal hold check. You can really put into place these checks pretty easily. And then you can choose, your input identifier, your output if we're looking to enrich any actions that this should adhere to. So for example, for deletions, we want to make sure that it goes through this pre-flight check and maybe access as well, just in case. But you can really associate all your different workflows there. Now, finally, we've got email settings. So we will provide you with templates out of the box, but you can, of course, change these for all the different automated email communications that are going out. You can add your different legal holds here. And then your privacy center, you can choose to add your policies, your different logos, your colors, and your styles. So really this no code section allows you to configure this entire privacy center to look and feel like your brand without actually having to build a website for it. So that is the general overview of our DSR automation. I want to make sure that we have time for questions. So I will pop back to the
Allison, thank you so much for going through that. And again, like Allison just said, if you guys have questions, please shoot them our way. Happy to try to answer the best we can. Allison, while we're waiting for some questions to come in, when working with prospects and things like that, what's the most common problem that you hear from others with products that they're currently using? What do you kind of run into that Transcend kind of helps with?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there's two main ones that I think come up all the time. One is just like the sheer amount of time and manual effort it takes from varying teams to actually carry out one of these DSRs. So even companies that are getting 10 a year are like, it's such a headache to have to coordinate with the various different teams, figure out where the data is, then coordinating back and forth with the data subject and figuring out who's responsible for each piece. So that manual back and forth is a huge one where Transcend can come in and really automate that workflow for them. And then the second one would be the breadth of integrations. So Transcend has a team that's completely dedicated to building and maintaining all sorts of different integrations for the sole purpose of carrying out these DSR requests. And so that, just the breadth of integrations that we have, and then that we're always sort of adding more to the tool belt, that comes up a lot as a benefit of Transcend for sure. The fact that we connect to all the major marketing systems, communication tools, and then not only do we connect to sort of your typical SaaS tools, we can also hook into your databases and your servers and things like that. So we're making sure we're really covering the full gamut.
Awesome. Yeah, it looks like we had a question in there, and that's good to hear because I've worked with other, software companies and things like that. They don't usually have a dedicated integration team, so that's pretty amazing. Leonardo Tyler, thanks for your question. Is there a reporting feature?
Yes, and great question. Let me show if I can find my mouse. Let me show you really quickly. We have this really nice dashboard here where it's going to lay out overview of all of your different requests by type, by volume. We will actually do some ROI calculations for you. The average fulfillment time for these requests, requests by status, request by subject. So short answer is yes. And then here is a kind of a visual for you. So it's nice and easy to read and understand and report on.
This section, is there anything what's the most common thing that people are looking for with this? Probably customization, I would imagine. But if Leonardo, if you have another question pertaining that, go a little deeper, happy to dive into that.
And I should mention that what I showed here is really just the reporting specific to DSR requests, but we do have reporting overall. So if you're needing to report on your various systems, things like ROPA reports or privacy impact assessments or anything like that, we can create reporting in general, but this will give you a nice easy dashboard that you can filter and be specific to the DSR requests.
Yeah, super important, obviously, high level. Oh, go ahead, Brent.
That if you wanted to create a report of the DSRs that you get, there was also an export functionality on one of the screens that Allison showed.
Point. Looks like we got another one coming in. Thanks, Linda. How does Transcend deal with data repositories that may be proprietary and does not have an existing integration? How are clients managing these types of workarounds?
Yeah, good question. So typically, if there is a database that proprietary tool is hosting data in, that's where we will hook into sort of your databases or servers or anything that's sort of behind your infrastructure, behind your firewalls. We can connect to those. If there is not a way that we can connect already out of the box through our sort of webhooks or database integrations or developer tools, which I can actually bring up here. These here are kind of some of our custom availabilities where we can create a connection to a database, a server, webhook, a cron job, prompt a person. So if there truly isn't a way for us to connect out of the gate, you can set up a prompt a person workflow where it will, rather than going into that downstream system to carry out the request, it will ping the person who is responsible for that system to say, hey, here's what we need. So it's automating sort of that coordination and that workflow between the two. And then, of course, we can see if we can build an integration. So like I mentioned, we have that team who is dedicated to building integration. So we can certainly work with you to get something stood up.
Awesome. I know we have 1 minute left. If anyone else has any other questions, we can wait till the top of the hour.
Yeah, and if you want to follow up with the exact integration that you're looking for, I can make sure to take a note and reach back out to help you get in touch with our team.
Yeah. Good point. Awesome. Thanks for the question, Linda. Appreciate the interaction. Well, we're at time. So Allison, Brandon, thank you both for doing this. And again, anyone that's watching, this is a series we'll continue on our product for more demos. One coming up next month. So be on the lookout for that next one. And thank you again for taking the time to view this. If you have more questions, feel free to reach out. Happy to help. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.